Tonight on Capitol Journal, there's finally a resolution in the contested Senate District 27 race between incumbent Tom Whatley and challenger Jay Hovey. We'll have the latest. The state is moving forward with its prison construction project despite a bond sale coming up short. We'll hear from State Finance Director Bill Poole. Jimmy Parnell of the Alabama Farmers Federation will join us to discuss how high fuel prices and inflation are impacting the state's farmers. And effects of the Supreme Court's overturning Roe v. Wade continue. We'll talk to those on both sides of the issue, State Representative Terry Collins and Stephen Stetson of Planned Parenthood, Alabama. It's all next on Capitol Journal. From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. After a dramatic week, there is finally a resolution in the contested race for Senate District 27. State Senator Tom Whatley has conceded the race to challenger Jay Hovey. Hovey defeated Whatley by just one vote in the Republican primary election. However, Whatley contested the results, and last week, the Alabama Republican Party declared the race a tie after deciding to count a previously invalidated provisional ballot. Later, it was confirmed by the state that the ballot in question was from someone not registered to vote at the time. The party then decided to rehear the matter and declare Hovey the winner. He'll go on to face Democratic nominee Sherry Reese in November. We should also note that a candidate in North Alabama's House District 2 is also threatening to challenge that election result. Kimberly Butler missed making the runoff by just 14 votes, and she now claims there were some ballot irregularities in Lauderdale County. That election contest has not yet been filed. Sad news out of Bibb County this week. A deputy sheriff died a day after being shot by a fleeing suspect. 32-year-old Deputy Brad Johnson was pronounced dead Thursday afternoon, according to District Attorney Michael Jackson. The shooting happened Wednesday when two deputies were chasing a suspect in a stolen vehicle. The man fired at them, shooting both and critically wounding Johnson. Authorities said the other deputy had since been released from the hospital. The suspect in the shooting was 26-year-old Austin Hall, and he was captured Thursday morning after he was found hiding inside a tent. The district attorney said Hall will be charged with capital murder and attempted murder. The state is proceeding with its plan to build two large men's prisons that will house 4,000 inmates each and replace some of the state's old, dangerous facilities. But in a bond sale this week, meant to finance part of the project, the state came up $200 million short of the $725 million of anticipated financing. However, State Finance Director Bill Poole said the state has the funds to move forward with the project and that additional financing could be sought in the future.
We're pleased with that outcome. We had hoped to sell a little bit more. The market was difficult in the longer-term maturities. We had over $1 billion of orders in the short-term maturities, which tells us that the projects were acceptable to the market. Simply, there wasn't interest in long-term maturities in the market. There's a location in Elmore County where we currently have a facility. So we'll build we're calling a specialized men's facility on state-owned property there to be owned and operated by the state of Alabama by and through the authority that met today. That facility will involve enhanced healthcare facilities, mental health facilities, and vocational facilities. So it will allow us to provide a much safer environment for inmates and for staff, and also to enhance those very important services that we need to improve upon in the state of Alabama. The other facility will be located in Escambia County, again on state land, same circumstances as relates to ownership and operation. That will be a more traditional men's facility, but will also have substantial on-site improvements as compared to the very old and dilapidated facilities that we're currently housing. And we're pleased. The objective here is to take old facilities and close them as these facilities come online. And I think that is a very, very important aspect of this. We want to close those old facilities and conduct our operations in better and improved, modernized facilities.
Activists who are opposing Alabama's prison construction plan publicly called on investors to boycott the bond sale. They argue that building new prisons won't fix some of Alabama's well-documented safety and health problems inside prisons. Asked if this opposition impacted the bond sale and kept investors away, Poole said there was no evidence of that.
We don't think it was a significant factor. There have been groups that are opposed to incarceration at all, in any level and for any reason, that have opposed this from the beginning. We knew that their voices would be out there as it relates to this financing, and they were, but we did not think it had a substantial impact on the investors as it relates to acquiring the bonds.
Montgomery District Attorney Darrell Bailey is trying to stop the revolving door in Alabama prisons by trying to help those who have been incarcerated find jobs and get back on their feet. Capitol Journal's Karen Goldsmith has that story.
According to the stats, more than 90% of people who are incarcerated will be released. And one of the biggest challenges that they face is finding a job. Enter Montgomery County District Attorney Darrell Bailey.
As district attorney, a lot of people don't think about this or understand this, but I'm for helping keep people out of the criminal justice system. Makes my job easier if not as many people are in the criminal justice system. So anytime that we can do that by getting people gainfully employed, we're going to do it.
People lined up early, talked with employers, and completed applications at his office's third Second Chance job fair.
The job fair is designed to connect those ex-offenders with employers who are willing to give them an opportunity at a job.
Employers such as Threefolds Care.
Our focus of our business is to be a threat in the community. Pretty much we help individuals with intellectual disabilities. We help them live a better quality of life.
These job fairs are open to anyone seeking employment, but since the focus is ex-offenders, Legal Services of Alabama was on hand to help people clear their criminal record when possible.
Well, if someone has perhaps a conviction for a misdemeanor, or some other lower offense, we might be able to get the record expunged. There's no guarantee of doing so, but it is possible, and so we have decided to pursue that area on behalf of low-income people.
In addition to the more than 40 employers, Hope Inspired Ministries promoted their job training program.
6 weeks are spent in a classroom setting learning the soft skills needed to maintain employment, such as financial management, behavior modification, character development, and also the soft skills, other soft skills such as resume building, job interview practice, and mock interviewing.
Their attendees also receive an internship that's meant to become a job and a graduation. For Capitol Journal, I'm Karen Goldsmith.
The Alabama Association of Realtors is seeking to increase diversity in the industry by partnering with Alabama State University to offer students a micro-credential in real estate. No college education is required to get a salesperson or broker license in Alabama, but, according to the Real Estate Commission, an exam must be passed to obtain these licenses. Realtors CEO Jeremy Walker and ASU President Quentin Ross said this is the first time a realtor organization and a historically black college or university have come together to build a program like this. Alabama civil rights icon Fred Gray is going to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom. President Joe Biden will present Gray and 16 others with the nation's highest civilian honor at a ceremony next week. Gray was a key figure in the civil rights movement, working as an attorney to represent those such as Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks, and challenging racist Jim Crow laws in court. He'll join a group of well-known medal recipients this year, including actor Denzel Washington, the late Senator John McCain, gymnast Simone Biles, Apple founder Steve Jobs, and former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. With the 4th of July upon us, folks are making plans to celebrate. State leaders, though, are reminding people to be careful on the roads and the waters and avoid drinking and driving. According to the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, more than 12,000 Americans are killed each year by drunk drivers.
The 4th of July holiday is a time that we can get together and spend with family and friends. It's always a very special time of year, but it also has a very deadly side, unfortunately. It's a time when people choose to drink and unfortunately drive or boat under the influence.
Although it's illegal to drive when impaired by alcohol, in 2020, one person was killed every 45 minutes to drunk driving crash on our nation's roads.
Alcohol, again, if you're going to consume it, we want you to be responsible. We want you to have some type of ride-sharing device, have that designated driver, whether you're on the highways or the waterways, and you're exactly right. For highlighting Operation Dry Water, the Marine Patrol Division is participating in that this year, and they're going to be out in force. So if you're on the waterways or the highways, we're going to be out there, and if you're caught impaired, and I say impaired because I mean other substances outside of alcohol, you're going to be arrested and you're going to be placed in jail.
Well, it feels as hot as a firecracker on the 4th of July. The summer heat also means thunderstorms, sometimes the dangerous kind. Capital Journal's Randy Scott reports on how to best be prepared for severe weather.
The summer season has officially started and many people welcome it. Before preparing for vacations, emergency management officials say it's time to get ready for that wild card: extreme weather changes.
We are watching the Gulf. We start watching that Gulf temperature, and as soon as we see that 82-degree mark, that is the catalyst, what seems like, for a very busy hurricane season. We know that it's already projected to be a busy season, so we're absolutely watching, preparing for evacuation shelters. I mean, these are all the things that we're doing behind the scenes that no one ever really knows about.
Montgomery County Emergency Management Agency Director Christina Thornton says preparations need to be in effect.
Now is the time, and I know with everything and the cost of everything right now, it's hard to go, oh, well, let me build a bag or get my house prepared. So we do it along the way at my home, and we do it at the office as well. Hey, I've got a couple of extra dollars. Let me grab an extra case of water and stick them in a closet, or extra batteries. And
making sure those go bags are stocked with supplies for everyone in the family. A checklist can be found at ready.gov, says Thornton.
You can actually look on different situations, whether it's hurricane, tornado, severe weather, even lightning, and things you can do to prepare your home.
The EMA is also helping people prepare.
There's even information in there about how you can become a member of the Community Emergency Response Team and better prepare yourself. If you attend one of the classes that we host, we always put it out on our social media, and we give you a preparedness bag that kicks off your anything you could need, whether it's a clipboard, knee pads, an extra flashlight.
Also, keeping open channels of communication open.
Get a way to be notified, and notified when those storms are, because if you're in your closet or your tub, you can't watch the television. But I bet you that cell phone's going to be in your pocket.
For Capital Journal, I'm Randy Scott.
A rural Alabama casino is being ordered to pay back taxes. The Alabama Supreme Court has ruled that Green Track in Greene County owes $76 million in unpaid taxes and interest. The decision accused the dog track of using charities as a sham for profitable electronic gambling operations. The justices unanimously sided with the Alabama Department of Revenue, which contended that Green Track's bingo operation was not in compliance with the constitutional amendment authorizing charity bingo games in that county. That means bingo recipients were the subject of state sales tax and other taxes. Attorney General Steve Marshall, whose office prosecuted the case, applauded the ruling and called Green Track a for-profit illegal enterprise. We'll be right back with tonight's guests.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Next, I'm joined by Jimmy Parnell, President and CEO of the Alabama Farmers Federation. Mr. Parnell, thanks for coming on Capital Journal.
My pleasure.
I realize that Alpha is kind of a household name, especially on the insurance side,
sure,
and the commercials and whatnot. But could you tell our audience a little bit more about the Federation and some of your advocacy efforts here in Montgomery and DC?
Yeah, we were formed 101 years ago by a group of farmers that were looking for a way to have input in policy in the state, and that's kind of been our goal ever since. I think we've been effective at that. About 25 years after we were formed, we started an insurance company that's now called Alpha that insures the people of the state of Alabama. Very proud of our organization, proud of what we're doing, proud of our customer service that we give those individuals that do business with us.
And how long have you led the organization?
I've been involved in the organization for 30 some odd years. I have served the last almost 10 years now as president.
Well, you know, I was planning on asking you about the recent lack of rainfall, and here this week we've had a couple of pretty good downpours across the state, which is good news. But I still wanted to ask you, just how are we doing in terms of where we stand with rainfall right now for farmers this year?
We're hurting. The rainfall that we have had the last few days, and we're very thankful for that, is more spotty. It's thunderstorm type rainfalls rather than widespread rainfall. We're behind normal right now and need rain for our crops. As you know, it really doesn't matter how many inches of rain you get in a year. It's how much you get when that crop needs it.
Okay.
And right now we're dry.
So it's a critical time right now?
It is a very critical time right now. We really need rain probably from now through August. An inch a week would be perfect, but we've been way short of that.
I'm thinking it's probably cotton, soybeans, corn.
Corn right now is probably the crop that's hurting the most. A lot of corn is in the production stage right now. It's tasseling and setting ears of corn, so it needs rain now. The other crops need rain, but it's not as critical yet because they're not in the more productive stage. They're not making fruit, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I remember you bringing the press out to that local farm
Right.
where they were having.
Right.
And I remember from that, you know, half of their farm, a certain percentage of their farm was irrigated. They had an irrigation system. They had some reservoirs. I know that's been a big push. Is that basically to help mitigate these kind of volatile rainfall seasons?
That's right. In general, Alabama has a very low percentage of our cropland irrigated. Compared to Georgia, Mississippi, we're way behind. Something we need more of in the state. It's very efficient because we generally only need it for a few weeks of the year. As you know, it rains a lot in Alabama. Average rainfall is 54 inches or something a year. But you've got to have some during that productive stage of the crop, or you miss the whole crop. You don't get a second chance.
Well, that's you know, we can't control the weather, but there's some other factors that are really impacting farmers right now that I wanted to ask you about. In top of the list are inflation and gas. Let me start with gas prices. I guess more appropriately diesel prices in most situations. This has to be something that is really impacting farmers.
Yeah, it's huge. The average viewer will know about their gas price where they fuel their car. Their car probably holds 15 gallons or some such number, maybe 20 if they have a larger vehicle. So they understand it. But you compound that tremendously if you're filling a tractor. Probably 100, 150 gallons is what it takes to go into a tractor. Semi 300 gallons. Those are huge issues for agriculture and all of natural resource products right now. Diesel fuel is flirting with $6 a gallon. The average customer is probably a little bit less than $5 in Alabama today for gas. Diesel is higher than gas, so it's a significant deal, particularly when it was $2 or a little less than $2 a year and a half or so ago.
So that's everything from, like you said, the tractor in the field, however many times you have to do that, to taking product to market or doing all the different things you got to do, and I imagine that leads to increased costs.
It does. I tell people that everything we eat, drink, wear, at some point use diesel fuel and trucks to get it to you. So it's going to have a huge impact on our cost of doing business and eating and surviving and all of those things that everybody has to do. The price of energy is huge. It's something we have got to get refocused on, and we need to be focused on producing energy in the U.S. All of this green stuff may be a good idea, but it is not a mature idea. There's not something out there that takes the place of gas and diesel and oil at this point. So we need to realize that and focus on production.
I've also been reading about rising prices for fertilizer. That also has to hit you, right in the wallet.
Yeah, that's a huge deal for agriculture. Last year, and I'm using a round number, your average cost of fertilizer would have been $300 and some odd dollars per ton. It's been $1,000, $1,100, $1,200 a ton this crop. It's going to be pretty tough. Our input cost on the whole crop, we've talked about diesel, that's a big deal. Fertilizer, that is a huge deal. Chemicals, once again, a derivative of energy. The base product of most of your chemicals that you use is some type of oil, and that all of it is exaggerated this year, making it very hard to be profitable. Product, commodity prices, the corn, the wheat, the soybeans, all of those, the prices are fairly good, but the input cost to grow that crop is so large. The farmers need to make a bumper crop in order to cash flow. Small crop and high inputs will be a terrible pain for the farmers this year.
Well, I know a lot of viewers, if given the option, would like to buy local, produce, other goods.
Sure.
What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I would tell you first, there's farmers markets all around the state where our farmers are growing crops and trying to sell them direct to the public. Most folks know where one of those are. If they might not, we are part of an organization called Sweet Grown Alabama. They can look that up at sweetgrownalabama.org and find out where some of those places are that they can buy various produce and vegetables. So it's a good product. They would enjoy knowing where it came from, and they would enjoy meeting the farmers that grew it. So I highly encourage that.
Yeah, I remember when you had the Sweet Grown event here at the Capitol.
Right.
I took home some really great strawberries that
Well,
day.
good.
I wanted to ask you about the farm center. We read a couple of weeks ago where it was going to be located in Clanton. That seemed to have fallen through, and maybe you're exploring other locations for this agricultural arena kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a dream of mine and a huge need for the state to build an ag complex that would have an arena, a lot of features that allow you to have various type functions. It's kind of multi-use facility. You could use it for horse shows and rodeos and cow shows and those things that everybody think of when you say something like that. But also could have concerts, car shows, gun shows, anything, boat shows, most anything you can imagine could be used in a facility like this. The study that we have says that it would generate about $50 million a year to the state's economy. We are moving forward. We're going to build one of these facilities somewhere in some way. Unfortunately, the Clanton-Chilton County site did not work out, just never could work out all of our differences. But we are moving on. We've hired a site selector that will begin helping us with that process. We've probably been contacted by about 20 areas in the state that are interested. Some of them have pretty interesting ideas, and I don't know all of their ideas right now of what they have to offer. But we're going to be giving those and any others that wanted to get in the running, so to speak, an opportunity to get that. Our goal is to put this on an interstate in the center of the state. Now, the center of the state is a fairly large area. We would like to get it where the most of the people are in a easy driving range.
And tourism and things like that, yeah.
Has the potential to have a huge impact bringing tourism dollars into the state. There's not a lot of these facilities around. A lot of states do not have something like we're talking about. And we think we could become a shining star to have those kind of events in the state. needs to be on side of an interstate so people can get to it easily. Someone comes to something from out of state, they're just not going to get off of the interstate very far and go rambling trying to find the location. So.
While I've got you, I know we talk a lot about what goes on here at the State House, but y'all are highly engaged in D.C. as well. I know that when I worked up there, y'all were frequently in D.C. engaging with the congressional delegation. I know a lot of that is at the Farm Bill. That every 5 years or so there's a new Farm Bill. So where are we with the Farm Bill, and have y'all been able, in the age of COVID, to still make it to D.C. to engage?
Yeah, we go. It's been a little different. The last year has moved a little more towards normal, but not totally back to normal yet. But we are engaging with the senators and congressmen and their staff from up there and working with them and other states. It's not a one state deal to write a farm bill. Farm bill is huge. It affects so many things. It is not just about agriculture. Matter of fact, probably 80-something% of the farm bill is about nutrition, and that's primarily talking about food stamps and that type of product. So it involves a lot of things. We're in the early stages of the discussions for the next farm bill. They have started having hearings around the country. Most of us that believe conservative and think conservatively on legislation are hopeful for this upcoming election to have an impact to kind of change the makeup, so to speak, of the farm bill and where we will be going. So nobody's in a rush today to get that discussion very far along, but next year that will be a big topic, deciding how we write the farm bill and how it's funded and what it applies to.
Well, and because of some of your advocacy, y'all engage politically, known for that over the decades of being very influential politically. I have to note, though, in these last two, we've had two Senate elections, U.S. Senate elections in the last couple of cycles. Y'all made some early endorsements that maybe were, could you call them long shots? I remember when, the Federation endorsed Tommy Tuberville. Nobody really thought of him as a front runner, so that was a risk. Ends up winning.
Sure.
Did the same thing with Katie Britt back when she was certainly not a front runner.
Right.
You see her success here recently.
Right.
Y'all been successful on your bets lately.
We're aggressive, and I think that's how you make a difference. The last person to a party usually doesn't have very big impact. The first person does. So that's kind of the way we look at politics. We have a grassroots network across our state. It's not a decision I make. It's a decision of every county of who we endorse, and the candidates that will get out and work and earn that endorsement early build a tremendous network of supporters across the state. They not only get our endorsement, they get people working for them every day trying to help them get elected. Basically, word of mouth. It's a powerful network. Our county board members are key individuals in each of their county. They're respected in their community. They're respected in their social clubs and things, their church, that type network. And once they know a candidate and start talking to their friends about it, we see a tremendous change in the way that affects the polls. So we're very proud of taking those steps early and making a difference. As you know, Senate is a huge deal. Each state has 2 senators. We're just as powerful as one of the big states like California or wherever you want to say that's got huge population. Alabama has the same say they have in the U.S. Senate, and it's important to us to have good conservative senators in those roles. We're very proud of Katie. Katie is tremendous. She's the near ideal candidate. She worked the hardest I've ever seen any candidate work, and I've had several really good, strong candidates that have worked. Not saying she's the only one, but I've never seen one work any harder at getting to meet the people. And in the process, the people that met Katie Britt loved Katie Britt. and that made a difference. That's why she got 60% of the vote in the runoff the other day.
Hoping to have her on soon. We're out of time, but I hope you'll come back and share more. And thank you for sharing, especially what farmers are going through right now in some difficult times.
It's trying times, so we're all praying for the right weather and the right crop, and that the prices will hold, because it would be terrible if the prices dropped after you've got all these high expenses in this crop.
Thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You're watching Alabama Public Television.
Next, I'm joined by State Representative Terry Collins from Decatur. Representative Collins, thanks for coming on Capitol Journal.
I'm glad to be here, Todd. Thank you for asking me.
Well, look, there's no secret why I'm having you on here. We're just a week after this monumental ruling, Roe versus Wade. You have been a pro-life advocate during your time in the legislature.
Yes.
So before we get to some other things about its application, I just want to ask you, because you've been involved in this issue, what was your reaction like that, a week ago when you heard the news from the Supreme Court?
I was flying to a conference Friday morning, and so when I turned my phone off airplane mode, it almost exploded in my hand. It was just beep, 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 beep. I think I had 20-something missed calls and text messages, and there were emails. Those are the only two things I get notifications. But I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm reading and I'm trying to catch up, and my conference is going to start in about 3 hours. And so I tried to call people back, especially people from our state, and at least say, I was so excited. I mean, like so many other people that have worked in a pro-life as an advocate, as a counselor, as a different, as a lawmaker, and thrilled. I mean, felt like it was an answer to prayer. Just praise God, and I can't believe this is true. I'm so excited. We got a little leak that it might be true, but that almost makes you almost fearful, like something's going to come in. And so I was overjoyed, and just mainly all day long as I talked to different groups, I think right now what we wanted to do is just to celebrate the victory, celebrate life. What we believe should have always been true was true now. Roe versus Wade is overturned. States now have the opportunity to come up with what their laws will be governing abortion. And that's a victory. That's an exciting thing.
Well, and you mentioned the draft, the leak.
Yeah.
Everybody was wondering, would the ruling be close to that
right.
leak? It was. I think there were 3 words that were changed. So, and as you mentioned, it sends the question back to the states.
Yeah.
Here in Alabama, there have been multiple laws passed over the years restricting abortion, the most recent being the one you sponsored in 2019, which was really meant as a vehicle, right? Y'all were trying
Correct.
to overturn Roe, and we've talked before how you meant it less as policy. And yet, at the request of the Attorney General, the federal court removed its injunction of this abortion ban, and Attorney General Marshall says that means elective abortions are effectively illegal in Alabama now. Do you have that same interpretation?
I have that same interpretation. I do think that that's what the Human Life Protection Act said, and now that it's in effect, I think that that's what it does right now. And so I would agree with that. I think that's where we are right now in Alabama.
I want to clarify a few things, because there's a lot of talk out there about what might be legal, what might not be legal, and maybe it's too early on some of these things. Maybe they'll have to be sort of fleshed out by prosecutors and things like that. People talk about ectopic pregnancies. These are the fertilized egg implants itself in the fallopian tube. These can be dangerous. So maybe the health of the mother clause.
I would think so. I mentioned earlier I was with Doctors Association group and all, and I think that is in a life of the mother, and that is the exemption that we had in the bill. So I think that would not be included. Some of those may have to be worked out in courts. I'm not sure how that works, but
what would you say, like morning after pill, other such medications, maybe not specifically addressed in the bill or in the law? Is there any clarity there yet?
I don't think there's clarity there right now. I'm not sure morning after and things like that. We did not get into contraception. We really didn't get into when everything begins, even with life, because I mean, you know, I know what I believe and I know what I think, but I think that the way I understand it is that it was against the law to have an abortion, and the penalty would be on the provider, the doctor that's doing that. That's who it was aimed at, and that the life of the mother was the exception. And the purpose of it, like you said earlier, was to address the Roe versus Wade, which the question being, is that baby in the womb a person? Is it, a human being, a life? And I believe it is, and I think science shows that it is. And so now that Roe is overturned, I think our responsibility now is to decide, is this where we want to be? And I think this is just where the communities get together and we have conversations and we make sure that we're going in the direction that the majority of Alabamians want us to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, along those same lines, I remember it was just 10 years ago, maybe not even that far, where a 20-week abortion ban would have been a major victory for the pro-life community. And yet these days it seems to be trending more toward these absolute bans and things like that. So I'm curious about that, because are you concerned with that trajectory getting to a place where that would be considered an extreme position, especially for folks who aren't really passionate either way about this issue?
I think I am a little concerned about that. I think that is going to be an issue that we're going to have to listen to all the different sides and points. And always the extreme sides are the loudest. They're the ones you hear the most. I remember I think it was Kerry Rich carried that bill. I think it was about pain, that they felt like babies could feel pain by that 20 weeks. And so that was a barrier that we wanted to go. But what I remember most during all of this time period is everyone's been trying to chip away at it. If we couldn't just overturn Roe versus Wade, which has now been done, where could we chip away that we might get something passed that would work, that would somehow limit abortions, that would make it less not contraceptive? I mean, that's the thing. When you're thinking of an abortion as a means of contraception, that's not, I don't believe, what it was intended, even at the first. And so, but making sure that mothers are healthy and that we have, I think right now we're going to have to build infrastructure to take care of children that are born that are not wanted. I know I hear of families all the time that are wanting babies, that are waiting for them. I think the cost of that process has got to come down. I think if we're going to have to see how it works out as we go through time on that. I think we're always going to be able to hear from the extreme, whether it's right or left. But what we've got to do is to see what the majority of our state feels like, and where do we want our laws to be that are representative of what the majority of the people want.
Mm-hmm. Interesting that you mentioned, in terms of taking babies to term and making sure that there's health care and things like that. This past session, y'all extended the maternity care for Medicaid recipients for that full year. I think it was kind of a pilot, but do you see that being maybe extended in light of this decision?
I think it could be. I think we'll look at a lot of things like that make it better. We invested over $17 million in STARS for quality child care. I think you're going to see more and more things where we're trying to uplift that and make sure that our families and are being taken care of, and that our mothers that are expecting and our mothers that are deciding to keep the babies or deciding to send those babies for adoption and all, that we have a pathway that's clear. There's been a group with the Alabama Law Institute for the last several years that are experts and working with adoption and foster law, and they've been working to rework the laws that we have so that we get rid of some of the bureaucratic tape, and so that we not put anybody in a place that's unsafe, but that we still streamline the process itself. And I hope that those will be ready to present by next session as well.
It seems to me that Roe versus Wade, 50 years ago, really made the United States unique, because it created this blanket right to an abortion outside of the legislative process. It's been there for 50 years. Whereas other countries didn't have that, and so they've dealt with it legislatively, as and including while science has evolved, right? And so you look at places like Europe, where I think in England it's a 24-week ban, and that's the least restrictive. Netherlands 22 weeks, Sweden 18 weeks, France 16 weeks, Germany 14 weeks. So those are all, those are the type of restrictions you would see really in American states. So my question is this: if you think if Roe hadn't have existed, do you think the United States would have addressed this legislatively, even on the state or federal level, and some of that more reasonable, maybe policies came out instead of the more extreme?
I think that that's very true. I think that that's exactly how it would have worked. I don't think that it probably would have been a federal policy. I think it would have worked out in the states, just like we do all the rest of our laws. And so I do think we would have come up with it. And there would have been some that were more lenient and some that were more restrictive. And I think that's what we'll see now. And I think that's how it should be. When we were working on Human Life Protection Act 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I guess now, in Alabama, if you were a drunk driver and you killed me, an expectant mother, you would be accused of 2 homicides, because in Alabama law, we consider that life in the womb a person. And so I think each state's laws will continue to represent those states, whatever they look at like. And so I think we're going to have to make sure that our laws look like how we want them to look.
Well, it's going to be something to watch as the legislature comes back into session early next year, and probably beyond that, because it's still going to be just such a hot issue for voters.
It is going to be a hot issue, and it's going to be a very divided issue. That's not going to change. Roe versus Wade, in effect and not effect, is not going to change the division on this issue. There's very few. I told a group yesterday morning that I spoke with, I said, when someone comes in my office to talk about this issue, my best thing I can do is to ask why they feel so strongly on the other side of the issue, on that pro-choice side. And then I ask permission to share, can I share why I feel so strongly on the pro-life side? Because when they leave my office, we're not going to have sang kumbaya and gone together, but we will have at least communicated where each of us are. And I think communication sometimes on this issue is the best we can get. And I hope that we have good communication over the next few months to decide and really understand where we want our laws in Alabama to be.
Well, speaking of communication, thanks for coming and sharing your perspective here on Capitol Journal.
Glad to, Todd. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
Next, I'm joined by Stephen Stetson, Director of Planned Parenthood, Alabama. Stephen, thanks for coming on Capitol Journal.
Glad to be here, Todd.
Obviously, I wanted to talk about Roe v. Wade and the decision that happened last week overturning that landmark ruling. First, just let me ask you, as Director of Planned Parenthood, Alabama, as a pro-choice advocate, what was your reaction when you heard that news?
I've kind of been comparing it to one of the Gulf hurricanes that you see coming, but it doesn't make it any less devastating when it arrives. We knew this was coming, but the impact has still been catastrophic, and there is a lot of fear, and I felt some of that fear, and there's a lot of anger, and I felt a lot of that anger as well. So when the news actually came, we scrambled to determine whether the holding would be any different than the leaked draft that you remember. And I think now there's a sense of regulatory compliance and making sure that our healthcare facilities, which we have in Birmingham and in Mobile, are complying with the law. And we want to be sure that all of our patients know that we're still open for business. We're still providing a number of reproductive healthcare services. But that initial feeling was still a punch in the gut, even though we knew it was coming.
Well, let's talk about here in Alabama. There have been, over the years, multiple abortion restriction laws passed, mostly blocked by the courts almost immediately. But now that's not the case anymore. At the request of the Attorney General, the federal court removed its injunction of the most recent law, the 2019 abortion ban, that effectively banned elective abortions, period, in Alabama. The Attorney General said, quoting, that elective abortions are effectively illegal in the state. Is that how y'all see it legally?
We're still consulting with our lawyers to be sure that we have a clear understanding, but and I'm an attorney, but I'm not our attorney in that regard. But yeah, I think that's probably right, that our facilities, and I think the other 3 independent clinics in the state of Alabama, have essentially halted providing abortion care at this time. We want to be sure we're not breaking any laws, and we also want to be sure we're not running afoul of any other peripheral laws like conspiracy laws. We don't want to be afoul of any parts of the law. So for now, we're really refocusing on our core services like STI testing and annual exams, wellness exams. We do a lot of contraception, and we still do a lot of stuff, but for now, abortion is probably illegal in Alabama.
Well, let me ask you about that, because I have been hearing a lot about efforts to drive girls to other states or drive women to other states. Provide transportation basically to states where abortion is legal. Is that something y'all are involved in?
We want our patients to get the health care they need, but for now we're putting even that stuff on pause. If people do their own research, they can look at what the law is in other states, but Planned Parenthood for the moment in Alabama is not providing that kind of advice.
Do we know yet about how the law would impact medically induced abortion? Well, first of all, the morning after pill, or other pills that would be taken. Does our law, do we know yet whether our law would ban those too?
No, there's going to be some really interesting legal questions coming up. I mean, I think one would be, for example, to use your point, if the FDA has approved a medication and says this is safe, can people still order that over the internet? So I think there's going to be a lot of questions left to be determined in the future. But for the moment, the lines between those things are still a little blurry.
There is some talk about the legislature revisiting that law, essentially adding back some exceptions, like for rape, like for incest, as has sort of been traditional, maybe even some more weeks, on that restriction. What have you been hearing about such legislative efforts here in the State House?
I think it's going to be an interesting fall. We've got a hot summer and then a fall ahead of us, and then the legislature comes in the spring, and we'll see. I'm hearing contradictory things, that there are mixed appetites for weakening the law, perhaps putting some loopholes in, some carve-outs. I think those are politically possible, but it's always risky this early to speculate about what could pass.
Well, yeah, and because if you think about it, in this political environment, this Republican legislature has almost zero incentive politically to roll back restrictions. None of them want to be accused of, like you said, weakening the abortion law. However, as you could see, some just kind of practical problems bubbling up over time as this law goes into effect. But it also brings up an interesting question about the time. The time period. I was talking to Terry Collins and said, 10 years ago, Republicans or the pro-life community would have celebrated over a 20-week ban, right? But now the movement is more toward absolute bans, as we now have in Alabama. But it's also, I could turn that around and say, Planned Parenthood would have opposed a 20-week ban, has for years. But now, could you see maybe even advocating for something like that would open up access?
Those kind of incremental changes are really tough to speculate about in the abstract, but I do think that there are ways to compromise to move us away from the polarized brink that we're on. I certainly think that in the state of Alabama, politicians are going to be less inclined to take a stand that they feel is out of sync with their constituents, but that's in the face of numbers that we've seen that shows that 80% of the people in the United States think Roe should have stayed law. And I don't know the exact numbers for Alabama, but it's probably a healthy majority. And I also think that that's going to run up against narratives that are beginning to emerge where individuals thought they had a right to do something and then realize that they don't, are going to translate that into a political will that, as you have said, we haven't had to reckon with this before. People have taken for granted that we've had this right, and when they realize they don't, I think there may be a political reckoning from that.
Well, yeah, because one consequence of Roe was this blanket right to abortion, and really you could say post-Casey. So let's just say the last 20 years, states have been able to pass these laws, abortion restriction laws, kind of cost-free. They knew they were going to be blocked by the courts, so it was almost just more theoretical and more, in some cases, messaging, knowing that the court's going to come along and block it. Well, now that script is flipped. Alabama's law is going to impact people. And my question is, how long do you think it might take some time for those impacts to really be felt to where it bubbles up politically, where the legislature may need to do something about it?
Yeah, it's easy to do something theatrical or symbolic when you know there's a federal backstop behind you. And so I think that what we've seen in the past is people willing to take a stand that they knew they didn't really have to defend. And now, as you say, the rubber's about to meet the road, or the dog has finally caught the car, as the metaphor goes. I think, yes, to answer your question, we're going to see stories percolate up as individuals are put in extremely unpleasant conditions of compulsory pregnancy that they had never previously anticipated. And I also think it's important to remember that there's a disproportionate impact on low income and communities of color that are, over 50% of the births in the state of Alabama were Medicaid births, for example. We're seeing a lot of people who are going to have to bring their political will to bear and to let elected officials know that these are life and death questions. This is not an abstract theoretical exercise about something like substantive due process in some con law class at law school. These are life and death healthcare decisions. So I think, yes, I think we're going to see a lot of that in the future.
I was talking about the same thing with Representative Collins because she's on the other side, right? And Roe versus Wade, it also made the United States unique in that we had this Supreme Court granted protection of abortion, but it was outside the legislative process, so we didn't have to deal with it, in realistic terms, whether it's Congress or the states, whereas other countries have, right? You look at Europe, and you go down the list of, I think in England it's 24 weeks. I think Sweden 18 weeks. I think we have a chart on this, but you have these, legislatively enacted, democratically enacted restrictions on abortion that they've had to grapple with for the last, let's say 50 years. So do you think if Roe had not happened, back in the early 70s, do you think that the United States would have then grappled with this question and maybe come up with more consensus restrictions, laws as it concerns abortion?
Yeah, it's an interesting hypothetical. I mean, we've never really been great as a country at dealing with things like medical nuance and people who can get pregnant, and things along those lines are difficult questions, often best dealt with by trained professionals and not either politicians, who are often not doctors, or unelected judges making these decisions. That is a reality that Americans are justifiably outraged about. So in a world where Roe didn't happen, you're almost rewinding the clock on the evolution of the entire American political experiment as well. The Republican Party developed in part because of the outrage and the desire to pack the judiciary with judges who wanted to overturn Roe. And so you were really unraveling in that hypothetical an entire political system. But I also think another way of thinking about it is, what if Roe had been decided not along privacy lines and the substantive due process lines, but along an equal protection line in which it was a right not to be forced to be compulsory pregnancy. And so I think those are interesting things to think about, and I think we're going to see the outcome in state legislatures across the country, and Alabama is not exempt from that. We're going to see a fight at the State House.
Yeah, and in some ways, you could see how this is almost the worst time in terms of, we are so divided Congress really can't get much done at all. You know, the extremes are really pushing most of the weight here, and so this time bomb has gone off, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. And I think it could last a long time. I think we could be, you know, almost like a post-prohibition era, or you know, after that kind of typical, you know, that sort of same reckoning over time.
Well, it's just worth remembering we're talking about a half century of established law, and if the Supreme Court and the federal judiciary are unmoored from stare decisis and the compulsion to adhere to past precedent, then, as you say, the polarized times that we're in are going to lead to some shocking results. And I do think it's going to take generations perhaps to unfold, but I also do think as these stories bubble up of people who are outraged, and, you know, the 14-year-old who's forced to give birth to the unwanted pregnancy from the youth pastor or whatever, like if these horrible stories begin to emerge, we're going to see the public react, and that will crystallize into political sentiment.
We're out of time, but I appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate the opportunity.
We'll be right back.
Daniel Pratt was Alabama's first major industrialist and founded the present-day city of Prattville as a self-sufficient manufacturing center. His factory complex, the Pratt Gin Company, became the world's largest manufacturer of cotton gins. Pratt was instrumental in Alabama's transformation from a predominantly rural economy to a more diverse industrial economy, devoted to manufacturing and the production of coal, iron, and steel.
That's our show for this week. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be back next Friday night at 7:30, right here on Alabama Public Television. From all of us at Capital Journal, have a wonderful 4th of July, and we'll see you next time.